have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Welcome to the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast. I'm your host, Carter, here with Colin. We're going to dig deep into Star Wars Last Shot, novel written by Daniel Jose Older. It was released on April 17th, 2018. One of my favorite things is Star Wars books, and so we thought we'd give this a read, and we'd get back to you. So, Colin, are you excited to review this book?
Yeah, not only this book, because it was quite the adventure, but also a lot of other books, something that is going to be a frequent feature on this podcast. There's a lot of books of current canon and legends, lots of material to go into, and stuff that we hope to see in other media. Let's get after it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a little background for those of you who haven't read it or who are unfamiliar, or even for those of you who have read it, is the novel came out as a tie-in to Solo, a Star Wars Story. So it takes place on two different timelines. It takes place in 7 ABY. That's when the main story takes place. So just a couple years after the Battle of Endor and after the Battle of Jakku. And then the rest of the story takes place in flashbacks. And it flashbacks into three specific timelines. It flashbacks 20 years into the villain's perspective, 15 years into Lando's perspective when he still owned the Falcon, and 10 years when Han still owned the Falcon. So we get a lot of different perspectives right off the bat, and that's written into the book. It's actually a really interesting storytelling device. So that's kind of where I want us to start off, Colin. How did you feel about these beat changes that were there, and the different perspectives that we were getting, the different ways the story was written, and that we were basically following 4 or 5 different stories the whole time?
So, just a quick note, we listened to this on audiobook, and this beat change, they changed narrators in between the different time periods that took place in the novel. And at first, because I'm used to a consistent narrator in a lot of the audiobooks I listen to, at first it kind of threw me off a little bit because there's a stark contrast between narrators and how they did voices and stuff. But by the end, I really warmed up to the concept. It gave me a sense that I really was changing timelines. There was, technically, I think there were deeply significant characters across, Han Solo, Lando, some of the other side characters in there, like Santa was in there from the comic books. So we got to explore quite a lot in this novel, and the difference in the narrators that broke apart these timelines. Like I said, it takes a minute to get warm up to, because there's not chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. We're going from Chandrilla. We're going to Cantonica. We're going to here to there. So, yeah. In my opinion, it's worth it just for that, in a sense, to get a change up on some of what is typically out there for books or audiobooks in general.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. So I had tried to pick this novel up a couple of years ago. I have a physical copy of it, and I tried to read it, and I got about a third of the way through and just kind of burned out on it. And it was mainly because of the narrative change and how difficult it was to follow. And so this book, I think, is probably one of the exceptions to the rule that it's just better on audiobook. Sometimes a novel is better being read, or sometimes they're pretty much equal. This one, I think, I would only recommend it to people on audiobook. Maybe not only, but I would strongly recommend if someone was going to pick it up, they do the audiobook.
Especially since they're fully produced. When they when the characters get into a trouble spot, there's blaster fires. If they're on a starship, there is the hum of the ship as it goes through space. You hear the ship jump into hyperspace or exit hyperspace. It's really cool. And not many novels do that. It's kind of, and it's quite the experience to sit there and listen to the different little aspects of the droids move around, or the different voices. Like the droids have these mechanical voices and stuff. It's really cool.
That's the exciting thing about Star Wars novels and listening to them is all of the music's incorporated. You know, they credit John Williams for the music at the end. You get all of the Star Wars music. You get all of the, you know, Star Wars sounds. You get I think it's really good. If it says Chewbacca roars something in a novel, you get the actual recorded sounds that they have for Chewbacca. And so this is something that I think is is really, really a nice thing to put into these books that make them feel a lot more thematic. They make them feel a lot more Star Wars. And so that's something I've really appreciated about Star Wars novels. And I find myself increasingly listening to Star Wars novels and reading others, but I am much more judicious on which ones I'll listen to versus which ones I'll read based on if I think they'll make a better listen or a better read.
Right. So, some, you know, the ones that I get drawn to, like, I think we both read Tarkin. That was a fun read. And I read the hardback on that. I was real interested in the character and his background. So yeah, you're exactly right on that.
Yeah. So, we can start sticking with kind of the aesthetic qualities first. So there, like Colin said, it rotates between 3 narrators. First narrator, main narrator for the story is the legendary Mark Thompson. You know, he has narrated tons of Star Wars audiobooks. I mean, into the 50s. Around the 50s or more than that, I'm sure. He's just narrated so much, and he's a great narrator. He can do voices for all the characters, as his Lando sounds really good. And you have, for all of the Han flashback scenes, you have the author narrating, Daniel Jose Older. And while Daniel Jose Older is a well-acclaimed writer, I don't know if I can say he is a well-acclaimed voice actor, because I did not think that Daniel Jose Older did a very good job narrating these stories. And I'll let you interject in 1 second after I mention that January Lavoie did all the Lando ones. And so January Lavoie does a really good L3. She sounds really close to L3. And so I think she was a good fit for the Lando flashbacks. But give me your thoughts on the narrators.
So the author in his flashbacks, I listened to this in parts over time driving in the car, and I think he came into his own at the end. He kind of evolved, if you ask me. The main narrator was really cool, hearing all the voices. But yeah, when I didn't have no idea L3 was going to be in this, and it struck me like lightning hearing, I know it wasn't exactly like off the screen, but from Solo, she was one of the cool characters. I made me want to go back and watch the movie for the 50th time or whatever, and to see, even if it was just a small part, to see that character go back and read the book just for her. It can be a challenge, but read the book to see what that character does. It's something else.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that the story following L3 is really good. This is a pretty droid-centric story, and everybody knows L3's droid arc in Solo, and so I think she was really done well, and I think the narration as a whole is good, and like we said, the swapping is good. Daniel Jose Older seemed very constant. When there were conversations between Han and Sana that would go back and forth, I would sometimes get lost on who was speaking, because there was no change in the voice at all between Han and Sana. So this was something that I was trying to get over, something I was trying to get beyond, because the voices were exactly consistent.
He could do other voices. Like there was an Imperial officer he did that seemed like jumped off the movie screen. A couple others I don't recall exactly, but he could do a couple voices that he tried. It wasn't bad.
Right. I think you're right. Next we can hop in. I think we'll do a kind of event by event kind of evaluation a little bit, but we're going to be a lot more loose on this review, talking about like characters and things like that, and just what we enjoyed the best out of this. And so one of the things that I thought was a mixed bag was the character introduction. There are some really good characters that are introduced in this. There are a couple that, they might not be, the characters might be a little bit of a mixed bag, but majority of them are really compelling and really interesting. And so one of my favorites that got introduced was Lando's love interest, Kasha. She is just, from start to finish, probably the best original character in this book.
I disagree. I think the villain is
the
most interesting character.
That's interesting. So tell me why you think the villain is so interesting. I'll give you my Kasha spiel after we hear about why you think Fyzen Gore deserves it.
Fyzen Gore is the most interesting because he's a Pauan villain. He's from Utapau. He's. Do we give spoilers on this thing?
Oh yeah,
how
I mean,
should we
it's
go on
it's a
this?
book review. We've got to give the spoilers.
Okay,
So.
and it's been out a couple. So okay, fine.
It's been out years. Yeah, we're a little late to the show on reviewing this anyway.
Well, there are some criticisms of this book, but and a lot of criticism in media today is not having a good villain. This novel had a good villain. He's not a human. He has some callbacks to General Grievous, and in a sense that he's a droid humanoid hybrid type character. He's evil for the sake of being evil almost, and for purely selfish purposes. He's extremely powerful in a lot of cases, and like he destroys TIE fighters with hand blasters. He's always one step ahead of the protagonists. At some points in the novel, it feels hopeless. So, in my opinion, if we're going to rank characters that were invented for this story, I think he's the number one, just because he's not just a pushover that a lot of villains are. His story isn't 100%. I wish his origin was a little bit better. He kind of turned on a dime for why he did what he did. But it can't be perfect. But yeah, please tell me what Kasha, because she's a good character too. Not taking that away from that, but I want to hear more about what you think.
Yeah. So for Kasha, I think that she is just the perfect love interest for Lando. She is, because, this book is a large part Lando. It's more of a Lando novel than it is a Han novel.
Right.
And we'll get to that later on kind of what that means for the story. But this is largely a Lando novel. And so I think that the author really captures Lando really well, especially at this point in time, just a couple of years after he destroyed the second Death Star, a couple of years after he joined the rebellion. And, where does he fit into the galaxy? Is this scoundrel? Is this womanizer? Is this guy that goes around and is just, generally part of the underworld, and a hero, a guy that destroyed the second Death Star completely selflessly, took the run in the Millennium Falcon thinking that he was going to die. And it's just like... Go ahead.
And an entrepreneur, too. He's an entrepreneur.
Yes, exactly.
The droid factories in Cloud City.
He's an honest businessman now. And it's like, where does he fall in between these two characters? And what's that about? And that's the whole struggle of Lando's story. And I think that Kasha is a wonderful complement to that. She served with him during the rebellion. They had a romantic spark during the rebellion. She is madly in love with him. He loves her, but Lando's never really experienced feelings like this before for a woman. And so... it's just that...
And she's conflicted because of Lando's past and unpredictability.
Exactly. And that's the whole struggle for him and her, is that how do they make this relationship work? Like, what does it mean for their relationship to work? Because he has such a conflicted past, and because she doesn't know if she's going to get, hero Lando or smuggler Lando. And that's just, it's a really interesting story. And so... by the end of it, they come together and they they have a serious relationship at the end. And I just think that throughout the whole thing, she brings out the best in Lando in ways that you wouldn't expect from a character who is pretty much a notorious womanizer up until this point. And so you wouldn't expect this kind of relationship to bring out Lando's best, but it really does. And she fits together with him really well as this understanding rebel. I think that's great. Another much smaller point is that when Mark Thompson, when they're doing the voices during his narration for Kasha, she has the Rylothian accent. She has the French accent.
Oh yeah, that's great.
And it's awesome. I mean, that's another reason to listen to this on audiobook is if it's important that Twi'leks have this accent. When Harrison Dula goes back to Ryloth, she slips into the French accent. And it's good for that to continue, and I'm happy that they do things like that in these Star Wars novels. So, I think Kasha's really compelling. This isn't to say, like you said, Faison Gore is very interesting. What he wants to do and his motivations. I'm a little conflicted on this because I think that the whole story surrounding like what he does and why he's bad are different, and so. I think what motivates him to be bad is way too shaky. I think that it is on really shaky ground. I don't think they established a good reason for why he's a villain. But everything he does after he just snaps, basically, and goes crazy, is like super good villainous behavior. It's exactly how you want a villain to behave. It's just, I don't know if the motivations are there. But the story is really compelling on like his ideology that, you know, droids are superior to humans, that we need, or not to humans, to all sentient beings.
Organics.
To all organics, that's the terms they use. And so, yeah, to all organics, and that droids just need to, you know, be the dominant race in the galaxy. They need to wipe out organics. And all of that is really interesting. I just wish that we had a little bit better reason for why he thinks that, other than he just seems to snap.
No, flip a switch, yeah.
But no,
yeah, that's all valid.
I do think that he's a really good villain. You know, there's some other interesting characters in this. I don't think we're just going to touch on every one. But there's a lot of really good things that the author does too, like incorporating just other species that we either don't get to see a lot in Star Wars or just in general. One of my largest complaints about Star Wars novels, or especially Star Wars video games, is we never get to see aliens. We're always the human protagonist. It's always following this band of humans running around the galaxy. And it's like, that is, you know, that's what the movies are, and obviously the movies need to continue to be that, but you don't need these, you know, side stories or these smaller stories to be that. You can have a lot more eclectic band. You can have a lot more aliens and weird things mixed in. So I thought that the author did a really good job of that, from side characters to characters that are pretty important to the story.
Yeah, we even come across a Gungan at one point. And it seems like after Jar Jar Binks, nobody wants to touch it. This author was brave enough to do that. It's still annoying, yes, me.
Yeah.
But the character wasn't a doofus either. He accomplished a lot, and I was, you know, I feel kind of ashamed to say this, but I was a little bit disappointed. I thought he was going to continue on with him, being that he mowed down a bunch of former stormtroopers, and I thought he was going to be a character that joined the crew, you know.
Right.
I want to see more of him.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So.
Yeah. Because, you know, they have an Ewok slicer on their crew, which is a funny concept.
Yeah, who'd have thought that?
Exactly. Yeah. That's crazy. They include the Gungan. They have an Ugnaught on their crew, which is totally... They say they have an Ugnaught on their crew, and then the guy's like not in the story at all. He's like an afterthought in every single chapter he's in. They're just like mentioned that he's there, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah,
it just feels really ham-fisted for a character that it's not like they ham-fisted some big character that everybody loves. They did that too, but it's not like for this guy they did that. They just have an Ugnaught there for no reason.
Yeah, it was an afterthought plot device. It's like, hey, this droid's broken because they shot it. We need to fix it. Let's throw an Ugnaught in there.
Right, exactly. And he's just there for most of it. So, yeah, I mean, but like the Ewok slicer, great. They run into a Toydarian diviner, a guy that Lando gambles with near the beginning of the book, and that was awesome. That's another race that I feel like is underused. And so it's nice to see things like that. Nice to see just in oft casual interactions that they don't have to be with a human. They don't have to be human-on-human interaction. Yeah,
and that's what's one of the great things about the Star Wars universe. You know, in some other science fiction, it's all human-centric or humanoid-centric. Star Trek is like that. But Star Wars brings a lot to the table when it comes to alien races, and you could argue droid races. And then, of course, the settings. You know, we go around to a lot of different spots in this novel, too. So that's the richness of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, you know, we start this book out with Cloud City, Lando, Fyzen Gore comes, programs a droid that tries to kill Lando, and then this is the setup for the story, right? It's why did this droid try to come kill Lando? What's going on? Droids aren't supposed to kill people except for like battle droids, but like this is a protocol droid. So like this is a problem, right? That someone was able to bypass this droid's program to make him kill. And so when we move through the first plot line, we get to Lando coming to Han and encountering him and saying, you know, we get the first like nod at a MacGuffin. We get that, hey, there's this thing called the Phalanx transmitter, and this is Lando speaking to Han. You had a run-in with this guy when you owned the Millennium Falcon. He thinks that I had the Millennium Falcon at the time. And if we don't find this thing in 3 days, he's going to kill everyone on Cloud City. And so it's high stakes from the very beginning, and it jumps right into Han and Lando interacting. I skipped over just a little bit. After we get to see a good chapter, maybe two, of Han being Ben Solo's father, which I think is very compelling at the beginning, and they try to set this up as a plot point, but I think it falls flat really, really quickly.
Yeah, it could be a lot better, and you know, the Han character was really lacking, and you kind of find out right in the first of these 2 chapters because he's just a straight up asshole. Which kind of thinking back towards the movies, but he had some redeeming qualities. Not in this book, not at all. It seemed like. I mean, he was a hero a couple of times, but man, and they sold the book as a Han and Lando adventure, and it was a Lando adventure with a Han afterthought.
Yeah. Well, so what drew me to this book is that the first Star Wars novels I ever read was the Boba Fett trilogy. But the 2 trilogies I read immediately after were the Han Solo trilogy and the Lando Calrissian adventures. I really liked these guys. I really liked the underworld concept in Star Wars when I first started getting into Star Wars novels. And so I was really excited to get to read this story. And then, it's like you said, it's marketed as a Han Solo and Lando Calrissian novel, and it should just be marketed as a Lando novel. Like, it's fine if Han's a side character in it. I don't mind that Han's a side character, but I don't want to be told that this is his story too. And then, nothing happens to Han. He's adult the whole time. He's a terrible father to Ben Solo, which the sequels kind of set this up as the case. But they make it just him completely incapable of anything. He's just very, fumbling around. He's a deadbeat, basically. And they describe him in the book as a man-child. And this, I don't think, should be the case for a guy who has been involved with the liberation of the galaxy. Han's pretty old in A New Hope. He's not pretty old, but he's older than Luke and Leia by quite a bit. And so throughout the story, he is, he's an older guy. He's involved in the rebellion, and his character transforms. Even in A New Hope, he goes from the guy who doesn't care about anything to someone who comes back and saves Luke. And then by Return of the Jedi, he is leading the team onto Endor to disable the shield generator. So he's taken on a lot of responsibility. He understands that he has a responsibility to the galaxy, and he gets it. He understands that. And obviously parenting is different than, stopping a shield generator or helping Luke blow up the Death Star. But it's this guy understands responsibility at the end of Return of the Jedi, and it's like the author just reverts him to how he was in Solo. Not even how he was in A New Hope, but how he was in Solo.
Yeah, and I'd almost say it's even worse than that. He's a one-dimensional. They're not even flying around in the Falcon. They don't even mention it in the... There's no redeeming qualities almost. I mean, he does a couple heroic things, but he's just an add-on for Lando.
Right.
They almost could have left him out of it.
Well, even all the main interaction with the villain is done with Lando. Obviously they save each other's skin all the time, but it's Lando's getting him out of every pickle. Han's talents aren't really showcased. They have a different pilot. They hire a pilot. And it's just Lando's the gambler. Lando's, he cheats at gambling, things like this. And so they showcase this a lot. But they don't showcase any of Han's skills. They just showcase him as a man-child, like they had said. And his struggle about being a parent and about being a good dad and how he's worried that he's not, and he's worried he's not a good husband. But it's all just longing to want to be. There's not really a lot of instances where he is a terrible father. He just can't put Ben to sleep one time. It's really odd things. I mean, you're a father, so you probably understand this better than I do, but he's just he does, it's not even he doesn't get complex things about parenting. It's he doesn't understand simple things that someone who doesn't have a child would probably understand.
Yeah. Parenting's hard and easy at the same time. So, I wonder if the author's a parent, because it's really hard to understand what he was trying to go for there with the Han character, and it's a huge disappointment. And even more so because, I think the author even introduced another character, and I think it's blatantly obvious that should have been rolled into the Han Solo character. The character's name is Taka. You remember his last name in the novel?
It's I can have it for you. It's I know exactly what it is. It's Taka is his first name. It's not coming to me. I know it'll come to me
Yeah,
here in just a second.
it doesn't matter that much. But that should have been Han Solo. Even when they introduced the character in the book, he has Han Solo as a name placard on the table where they go to hire him as a pilot.
Oh, Taka Jamarisa. It's Taka Jamarisa.
Okay. That character shouldn't exist. It should have been Han Solo doing everything they did. And literally, if you'd have changed maybe it's Han Solo with a split personality or something,
Yeah.
I could speculate as to the author's motivations. I don't think that matters that much. But, yeah, it's a huge disappointment if you ask me.
No, I think you're right. And so that's probably the lowest point of the book. There's a lot of highlights. There's a lot of really good things to like about this. And like we had said, the Lando story is very compelling. It's just probably the low point of the whole novel is the Han story. But so in these first scenes where Han and Lando are interacting, we also get pretty much most of the Leia characterization. I think Leia is a great wife in this. I think that she is I think she's a great wife. She's a great mother. She's clearly dedicated to her politician role. I think that everything Leia is set up to be and what you would expect her to be just a few years after the Battle of Endor is exactly where we see her in this. But I think the way she interacts with Han is not a good characterization. Now, this is off of me just reading Bloodline less than 2 weeks ago. And so...
Yeah, I started that today.
Exactly. And so this is the peak of Leia characterization for me. I think that Claudia Gray understands her to a T. She gets Leia, and it was perfect characterization of Leia. And so the characterization in this is only lacking, I think, because I now have that perspective. Because I think it's fine. I think they set Leia up to be really good, and she's not in the novel much. She's, in the first couple chapters, and she shows up here and there for a comms chat with Han, but she's never in it much. And so I think that for the most part she's good, but there's a few things that she does in interacting with Han that you just wouldn't expect, especially from the way their characters interacted in Empire Strikes Back and in Return of the Jedi. Obviously Leia is fiercely independent, and this is one of the best parts about her character. But the ways that she almost talks down to Han at multiple points, it just, again, I think this is a problem with Han's characterization in the book.
Yeah, it all felt like an afterthought. I hate to beat a dead horse, but this is a Lando novel. The Han Solo Leia interactions are an afterthought scab on to expand the story a little bit.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's the thing about it being a Lando novel, is that the Lando-Leia interactions feel more genuine and well thought out than they do the Han and Leia interactions. Lando's his classic smooth self, it's just clear that this author just understood Lando's character to a T that he just didn't really get Han's.
No.
But we can move through that. So they move on. They assemble a team. They get together the people that we talked about, the Ewok Slicer, Taka, Kasha, and they take off. They are ready to go figure out where. Oh, also can't forget they add Chewbacca in the absolute most ham-fisted way possible by the end of the book.
He doesn't do anything the whole book.
No,
he's get captured.
Yeah, he's in the book the whole time. You forget that he's there a lot of the time. The reason for the book is that Faizan Gore, the villain, comes and chops off a bunch of Wookiees' limbs and takes them to go splice onto his droids, because that's his big thing, is he takes organic limbs and puts them on droids. And which again, if you're the guy who thinks that droids are superior, why are you, understandably, humans take droid parts and put them on their bodies. Why shouldn't droids do the same? He says this, and it's well, the droids shouldn't do the same because, as you say, human bodies deteriorate. So what's the point? But regardless, he comes to Kashyyyk, takes a bunch of Wookiee limbs, and then Chewbacca has to go on a quest to find these limbs because the souls of the Wookiees can't rest until their bodies are brought together in one piece. And you think, okay, yeah, there's got to be this crazy compelling reason. It's going to be really interesting. Chewbacca's involved. That's great. You can't have a Han Solo novel without Chewbacca. And then you just get to the end, and it's oh yeah, the guy used him to splice him onto some droids. Why'd he go to Kashyyyk? No answer. No one has any idea. Wookiees are really strong. He must have wanted some Wookiee arms. It's just such an afterthought. And it's like the author realized, oh yeah, you can't write a Han Solo novel without Chewbacca. How are we going to get Chewbacca in this? And, whatever.
It's
Maybe
totally unnecessary to have him in there.
Exactly.
Left him on. They could have gone there, consulted with him. Hey, what do you think? And then left. Well, that's pretty much what happened, except he collected the parts at the end,
Yeah.
Flew a ship around.
Exactly. So, all this to say, then they go on to the mission to Grimdock. They go on to Substation Grimdock, an old Imperial prison now being operated by the New Republic, where Fyzen Gor had previously been held. This is where they meet the Gungan. They go talk to him. They go research in the Grimdock archive, and they figure out, Fyzen Gor was once incarcerated here. And then that's, they learn some more information to go get the Phalanx transmitter. And so this is where we meet the Gungan. This is some pretty interesting interaction. There's some good action in this portion. Grimdock is, I don't believe we've seen it in canon before. I could be wrong, but this is an interesting little location for us to explore. Yeah, I'm right. It's only a last shot thing. So interesting location to be explored. But, I don't feel like a whole lot happens here.
Well, in the whole setting, you find out there's a mini twist at this point in the novel. There's some monsters that the characters fight. There's a really cool space battle, if you ask me. From when they get there, there's some tension there to when they leave. It takes a long time. I think the dialogue could use some refinement. Like if the author could go back and fix it or something somehow. But other than that, like I said, the Gungan character wasn't bad. The space battle was really cool because you see, this is one of the first instances where you're seeing what Fyzen Gor is capable of.
Right.
And I remember thinking back, why is the ship doing what it's doing? It rams a couple of other ships, and you're like, oh my goodness. And you think about the scale of some of these ships in Star Wars. We've seen it, the Holdo maneuver and a couple other things. And, there's no hyperspace going on here, but it's still a devastating effect that freaks people out. You see some heartlessness of the Fyzen Gor character, and that Leia comes in and saves the day at the end of it. So there's some cool stuff in that part, and the Grimdock is really cool. I do hope we see more of that. I think it's a really neat concept.
Right. I think you're right. So then, I think now is when we have to start talking about other plot lines. Throughout the book, other plot lines have just been sprinkled in, but I think now is where the buildup is important. And so you have the Han plot line, which can get resolved as Han and Sana Starros, who, great character. She's awesome. She needs to be in more things. Han, Sana Starros, and Chewbacca, they steal the Phalanx transmitter. They try to sell it. Its a deal goes sour. And then that's about it. And then Fyzen Gor sees him years ago. This is before, this is way before Han was part of the rebellion, way before this story. And then that's about it. Again, the Han story feels like an afterthought because you learn throughout the rest of the novel that this doesn't really matter. That Han's interaction with the Phalanx transmitter in the past basically has no bearing on the story whatsoever. He could have not interacted with it then, and it would have been the exact same.
No.
And so this is troubling. This is annoying, but we can get over that because we have Lando's story, which is very impactful, and that Lando's on Cantonica, having a great time, doing his gambling thing. L3 tells him, we need to leave right now. I need you to take me to these shattered ice asteroids. Well, she doesn't tell him originally where she's taking him.
She just drags him there. They just go. He's like, we got to go right now.
Yes, right now. Exactly. And much to L3's character. Again, L3's really characterized well in this. And so I think it's just, beating a dead horse. He's done a really good job characterizing Lando and L3. But anyway, she takes Lando to the Mazulan remnants, the ice moon of Missoula, and the Mazulan remnants, which is the ice moon that shattered. And so now it's a bunch of ice asteroids. And they watch a couple Imperial starfighters circle around this thing in the Mazulan remnants. And then Fyzen Gor comes out and attacks these Imperial ships. And Lando and L3 witness this. And then they get in a little bit of a scuffle and then leave. And they have to get out of there. And so this is kind of the whole of the story for them, is that, you know, you don't really understand when you see this what's going on. You just know that, oh, they saw Fyzen Gore in the middle of these ice asteroids. We don't really know why he's there. L3 was like really needed to get there, but you don't really get why. And so
you find out later.
You do find out later. This is a good setup. This is just what, you know, for now, you don't know.
Yeah. At the time when you read it, you think it's just part of the story, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Right.
But later on, ...
Exactly. And so then we're back to the original story. You have Han and his group. They're going to split up. So you have Han and Lando go one way. You have everybody else go the other way, which is kind of a weird way to split up a group of like 7 people, but whatever. So Han and Lando, Han and Lando, head to the Graven Monastery, which is where they meet some like cultists, these
followers of Fyzen Gore.
Exactly. These organics who refer to themselves as like a string of numbers and then like a name. And they're like, you know, we are not perfect. We are sinful because we're organic, but we're closer to being droids because they've grafted a bunch of droid parts on themselves. Really,
or donated their own organic parts to droids.
Yes, exactly.
This setting is really scary.
It's creepy. It's super creepy.
Yeah, and what happens next? You're really glad Lando's there to do what he does.
No, well, exactly. So it's really creepy. They sent the other members of the team, the other 5, off to go hunt for the phalanx, and now they're going to get more information from the Graven Monastery, from these creepy guys. So they go. Lando talks to the main guy, and they start to have to gamble, and they say, you know what, we're going to basically do this dice game. It's you drop these things onto a plate, and how they land is how you can tell they win. A very Star Wars gambling game. They always, in every Star Wars novel, the author invents some new kind of gambling for Lando to play in, just so you don't have the same sabacc game over and over. And so they play this game. They drop these things on the table, and so the stakes are that they will give them the information if they win, but if they lose, then they're going to cut off their arms and donate them to droids.
And it's not like going to be some quaint procedure either. They tell them this, and the other droids with saw arms start spinning up the blades. And because it's a produced novel, they have the blades spinning in your ear the whole time they're gambling, too. It's really cool.
It is really
scary.
Cool. It is really
It's a horror movie. It feels like they're walking into some den of horrors on this thing. It's so scary.
Yeah, you really get the fear. You really get the sense of dread just from these sounds. Like, it adds so much that these saws are buzzing in the background. So, you know, Lando and Han's hearts are pounding. Lando gambles Han's arms, and is along with his own, to play this game of Vazavir. Well, Lando drops the things and he wins the first round. And then the guy they're gambling against, the 7-7 Durgios is his name.
Yes.
And so 7-7 Durgios then says, well, it's best 2 out of 3. And Lando's like, come on. They argue with this guy, and then finally they just have to do it. So Lando loses the second round, and then he wins the third round. And so they get to keep their arms. 7-7 Durgios gives information. 7-7 Durgios was originally an Imperial admiral who was obsessed with the Phalanx Redux transmitter. He had captured Fyzen Gore and had tortured him, but Fyzen Gore didn't break. 7-7 Durgios broke while torturing Fyzen Gore. He, Fyzen Gore's fortitude, broke 7-7 Durgios' mind. And he was like, if this guy has so much fortitude for this cause, it must be true.
Yeah, and this is one of the this whole setting, it's one of the more compelling parts of the whole book. You could tell that this side of the novel, the author really had a lot of passion for it, put a lot of effort into it. You know, the villain, the little supporting characters for the villain. That was really neat. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, no, it was. It's this whole thing. And again, he adds new aliens. There's a Quarren in this. It's just this was, like you said, you could tell this was a labor of love for this part of the novel. That the author had the idea for the villain, had the idea for the setup, and had, Lando's going to be involved, there's going to be gambling, and he really got this. And so he did a great job. And so Then, immediately after this, Han and Lando get into an argument about how Lando just gambled their arms away, even though they won. And Lando tells him that he was cheating and that obviously he was using a magnet to attract these things to him. And we know that Lando is cheating. He cheats at all of his gambling games. He says he hates luck in the book, which is a classic gambler thing to say. And so then they... Lando and Han head to where the team had last said they were, and they run into Peekba in an escape pod, the Ewok slicer. And so they have to figure out, they can't talk to her because neither of them speak Ewokese. And so they watch these data cards that recount to them the first data card is that Taka's parents were Alderaanian and they died on Alderaan. So you learn that Taka is Alderaanian. And then the second recording is a distress call from Kasha to Lando, letting them know that Fyzen Gor has hacked into the ship that they were onto Taka's ship, and is now aboard it. And then at the end of the recording, Kasha admits how much she loves Lando and how, even though he's a scoundrel, she wants to be with him, and just, dumps a lot on the guy.
Right before a big fight. Come on now.
Right, before a big fight. And so then in Kasha's video, she's like, he's gonna turn all these droids against organics. It's gonna be this giant droid apocalypse across the galaxy. So Han tries to get a hold of Leia, and he can't do it. And that's the whole point of the Phalanx Redux transmitter, is that it turns droids against their masters. It gets
it transmits the signal. Fyzen Gor is the one who turns droids.
Well, sure, right. It can transmit any signal, but the signal that Fyzen intends to transmit with it is that it's going to turn all of these droids into murder machines and kill a bunch of organics. And so, like Colin mentioned at the beginning of the novel, or at the beginning of the podcast, Lando runs a droid manufacturing company. So this is terrible because Gore reveals that he has the codes to access every single one of Lando's droids. And so millions of Calrissian droids, Calrissian Enterprise droids, are going to attack and kill all of these people, including one of the droids in Han's house who basically babysits Ben. And so this makes them all panic, obviously. So they pursue Fyzen Gor and he's in the Vermilion, Taka's ship, to the Masulan remnants. So now you understand why they were at the Masulan remnants. You get exactly why they were why the Lando story took us there in the first place. And that's that the Phalanx transmitter is part of these remnants. It's floating among them. And these remnants move across the galaxy in an untrackable pattern. Astronomers can't figure out why it moves around the way it does. And so this Phalanx transmitter is around it just so they can't be able to track on why it goes around the way it does.
Yeah, and it not only that, but it's collecting a junk pile as it travels across the galaxy. So they're following this trail of starship parts and blown up space stations that it's made into itself to become more powerful.
Right, exactly. So
and then I think one of the coolest things I've seen is Lando fights Fyzen Gor and his support droids in a jetpack fight amongst the ice asteroids and this debris field.
Yes, it's
really cool. I had a lot of fun picturing this in my head because they both got their blasters and all kinds of cool stuff. Man, it's neat. It's a really redeeming part of this book.
It is. No, it's great. So yeah, you have Lando and Chewbacca both go out there to fight Fyzen Gor and their droids. You have Fyzen Gor's newly Wookiee enhanced droids try to strangle them with their Wookiee limbs. Chewbacca's fighting them. And things look pretty bleak. And then you have the L3 assault team come out of nowhere, which are a bunch of droids that look just like L337, come out of the ice asteroids and start helping Lando. And then you have Lando start to get in his comm what sounds like a droid talking to him, and he figures out that it's the Phalanx Redux transmitter as a droid speaking to him and saying that, I don't want to do this. This is against my programming. It's not what I was originally intended to do. My master, Fyzen Gor, is making me do this. And so Lando has to try and figure out how to get in there to fix it, how to turn it off. And so the Phalanx Redux transmitter directs him how to destroy it. And Lando gets in there. But as Lando's about to destroy it, it's already too late. Fyzen Gor has activated the droids, and you get a really neat, couple page flashback to a couple minutes in the audiobook. Not flashback, but flash to Chandrilla, where the coffee droid, the chef droid that they have, is he says his eyes go red, and it becomes crimson, and he sees Ben Solo, and he's, thinking about the best way to kill Ben, and how he's going to kill all of these organics. And it's, again, really creepy. This is there's parts in this that just feel like a horror novel.
Yeah, that part's written really well. And it was scary, for sure. Yeah. And who knows what else is going on. There's thousands of droids out there doing all kinds of stuff. But what happens next?
Exactly. So then Lando decides he has to make the ultimate sacrifice. He puts all of these detonators around it, detonates them. Then he starts to try and run and get away, but he knows he's not going to make it. But he tries anyway. He blows up the Phalanx Redux transmitter, which turns out to be the medical droid that Fyzen Gor had originally had when he was still a student, still a medical student, and was the very first droid that he had ever augmented with organic parts when he had first snapped, that he had named Number 1. And so this Phalanx transmitter, Lando runs away from the detonators. He doesn't think he's going to make it, and then the L3 assault team grabs him, takes him away. They're able to make it out. It explodes. It kills it. Fyzen Gor is floating out in space, and Han Solo shreds him with blaster bolts from the Vermilion, from Taka's ship, just rips through him. There's a really funny nod about Darth Maul. There's a really funny line there that Taka says. Han first shoots him in the waist, cutting him in half. And then Taka says that, when you cut someone in half, they might not stay dead. And so Han shoots him in the head. And it's just really funny. But then, you get back to the ship. This is after the climax. And now they're just explaining all of how this happened. How was the L3 assault team there? Well, L3, when she had first went there with Lando, had seen what this was. She had figured out a way to plant a virus into the Phalanx Redux transmitter. She had stationed like-minded droids like herself there, and had built one, and then it started building others out of the scrap metal there, to do exactly this. To
defend the Phalanx from Fyzen Gor, yeah.
Exactly, to defend the Phalanx from Fyzen Gor so it wouldn't get into anyone's hands. And these droids were programmed to make sure Lando survived, because L3 had the foresight to know that Lando would probably be involved. And it's a good wrap-up. It's a good wrap-up.
Well, more than that, you're leaving out one of the key points is that, when the chef droid is going to go kill Ben Solo, he's got the crimson hue in his eyes and is seeing everything in red. But then there's a flash of light, and he goes back to normal. And his memory of being homicidal is totally erased and goes back to, he thinks little Ben Solo needs some calf. That was a funny line throughout the whole book. Is for coffee is called calf.
Right.
It's funny.
Exactly.
But that was part of L3's virus, was that, hey, if you receive this command, a negative command from Fyzen Gor, well, then you just hit the reset button and put it all back to normal.
Right. It never happened.
So this one little chapter, a couple of chapters from back in the first half of the book, you think is this not really anything, when turns out she's the true hero of the whole story. It's really cool. I thought it was anticlimactic. Like, he just blows it up and that saves everything. That's kind of silly, But no, it was L3 all along.
Yeah. No, it was great. This again, this adds almost more characterization to L3 than the Solo movie did. It's just really good. And so one of the things that relates the most to this whole novel is, like I had said, I read the Lando Calrissian Adventures. And in the Lando Calrissian Adventures, those 3 novels, it focuses on Lando and going on some crazy adventures. They're mentioned in the Solo series, actually. There's a nod to him when he's doing he's recording himself, talking about the Lando Calrissian Chronicles. And he talks about the Flame Winds of Ocean, which is the title of one of the books. But in these books, in the Mind Harp of Sharu, which is the first one, he deals with a sentient race of droids from a different galaxy. And so I don't know what it is about Lando's character, but even from the 1980s when these books were written, he has just like been destined to have this affinity towards droids and work with sentient droids. Like the Phalanx transmitter really seems to have gained sentience by this point. And like the L3 droids all seem very close to sentience. And so it's something very unique about Lando's character, and this whole book feels like a nod to the Lando Calrissian adventures and a lot of the storylines that kind of flowed through that. And with the, with the Masulan remnants, these weird ice asteroids, those books always had really weird and engaging places, like the Flame Winds of Ocean. And so it's nice to see them pay homage to these Legends books in an appropriate way for Lando.
Yeah, and it wasn't just there, like we said, Grimdark. That place was developed fairly decently. They go from a prison cell to the underground and running from monsters, and they face some obstacles along the way.
Yeah, and we get, they mention a lot of Han's story takes place on Takodana. I love that. I want Takodana to be fleshed out more. That's one of the things I thought was the best about The Force Awakens was the introduction of that planet and of Maz being a 100-year-old character, so she can be in a lot of stories. She was recently in the High Republic comics, which I think is great. And so I just think that this whole interpretation was really good. And I think that there was a lot of good areas that were fleshed out. There were a lot of good characters included, lots of good alien races. And we had said what our problems were, but I think the novel on a whole is pretty good. Colin, unless there's another point you want to cover, I'd like to ask you to kind of rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, to give us what you think the book deserves on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'd say about a 6.5, maybe a 6.8 or somewhere in between there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was exactly going
to get kind of granular on it. For me, this is Mission Impossible in space. They assemble a team. They have an objective. There's a big bad thing going to happen, and they go and save the day against a big bad. So, yeah. I really like adventures. I really like good villains. I like the droid aspect being explored more in the Star Wars universe, and how they can be a force for not just servants and slaves, but they can be a force for, not just, we're not talking about battle droids either. We're talking about, a bad guy going and making them do bad things.
Yeah.
So I really like those concepts. And then obviously the downsides was for me, the biggest one was the Han Solo character could have been a lot more. And that's just a huge disappointment. That pretty much takes it all away. And the rest is just nitpicky stuff like narration foibles here and there. We wanted to see more of Chewbacca do some cool stuff, because he does. But that's 6.5. We'll say 6.7.
Yeah, well, I think I'd land on a 6.5. I think that you have all of my criticisms wrapped up, though. That, Han, he's just not a good character. He's not a character in this. He's less fleshed out than some of the side characters. It's just, the author doesn't get Han. Chewbacca, completely useless. But as far as a Lando novel goes, this is great. It's a good Lando story.
Another thing that really draws me to all these new canon, and especially post-Empire books, is I want to see, that's why I'm looking so much forward to reading the Bloodlines, is all the meta stuff. I want to see how the New Republic works. I'm curious how they set all the nuances and things, and discovering these new places, like you said earlier, with the Grimdark and stuff like that. How has the Republic grown and from the rule of the Empire and dealt with all the hardship of people missing and stuff like that? We get a lot of little bitty things like an Ewok slicer. Would that even be possible in the old Republic? Who heard of such a thing? But they're such integral characters to the fall of the Empire that I guess they decided to bring them along. It sounds silly, but by the end, it's really neat.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I couldn't agree more. I'm really happy we reviewed this book, and I'm really looking forward to reviewing others in the future. And I'm super excited to reading Bloodline, because it's honestly been my favorite Star Wars novel I've read in the new canon so far.
Yeah, good. What else we got Is that it for this? We're doing some Holonet news or what?
Yeah. I think we should jump straight into the Holonet news. There's been some pretty interesting news, mostly on the TV show front. You know, our last two Holonet news have been really video game focused, but these are all TV show. So the first bit is from the Direct, and it's the report that Star Wars: The Acolyte is delayed. So we are not going to get Star Wars: The Acolyte as soon as we thought. Filming has been delayed. There's no information on why that is, but unfortunately, Acolyte has been delayed.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it's I'm really excited for this series, especially since it takes place in the High Republic era. It's going to focus on dark side users. It's female focused. There's a lot of good things about this series coming up, but it's pretty disappointing that it's going to be delayed in filming. Not that we're not getting a lot of good Star Wars content this year, but I just hate to see that. I hate to hear that that's the case, because I know people are really excited about it, even though we virtually have no information about it out right now. There's basically nothing that anybody knows about the show yet.
Yeah, the High Republic area it's a lot of fun to, it's a blank canvas. I hope they do a really good job. I'm really interested to see more Jedi that's not a Skywalker or something that has to do directly with the Skywalker. So
yeah, there's a fertile era.
Bad ones,
Yeah, there's a fertile era for that. Yeah. And so the the next bit of news we have is Kenobi came out with new set photos today. We get Kenobi in a poncho. We get a little better look at the Grand Inquisitor, and he looks a little better. He his face is a little longer. I don't know if they fixed it or if there's just a better angle. But we got some new Kenobi set photos. So this was certainly a good bright spot to the day. They're trying to keep people interested in the show, and with as poor as Lucasfilm markets some of their stuff, and as poorly as they've handled some of their marketing, I think they're at least trying to do better with Kenobi, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. Listening to the fans is a big deal. Fixing the Grand Inquisitor would be a really good thing. The most glaring example, I think, a meme I saw, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie's out, and somebody edited the photo of what Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would look like if the fans didn't complain. And it's just silly. And so I hope Disney realizes that and avoids this situation. Maybe we've seen a little bit of that,
Yeah, no, I hope so. I think you're right. We'll see what the case is when the show actually comes out. But for now, I'm hopeful. I'm certainly hopeful for now. And then the final bit of TV news for the Holonet news section is Andor was reportedly going to be 5 seasons long, but they've now moved it to 3 seasons. And, it sounds like initially that sounds like a bad thing. Oh, no, we're getting less content. But honestly, if the story fits better into 3 seasons, I'm happy, because I don't think they should stretch something into 5 seasons that shouldn't be. So if we get a more succinct and interesting story, then I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I just hope we're not missing out on anything. I hope there's not something that they decided was a bad idea that, if we got to see a look at it, was going to be a good idea, Yeah. I'm always going to want more Star Wars, especially all these different aspects that we haven't gotten to see much of.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Andor is a show that a lot of people have been like, nobody wants this, why are we getting this? But it's something I'm really excited for, specifically because no one asked for it. Not in the negative way that, oh, no one asked for this, they just shouldn't have delivered it. They could have spent their money on something else. But because some of the best stuff is when they flesh out these characters that we don't know a whole lot about. And people are less tied to them, people are less emotional about things. Like, the Kenobi series walks a fine line. Obviously, if there's something that's going to upset fans in that, it's going to be The Last Jedi incident all over again. But for Andor...
We don't want to ruin good characters.
Exactly. But for Andor, there's, no expectations going in. He wasn't super fleshed out in Rogue One, and now we're going to get we're going to get a look into him, and it's going to make Rogue One a lot more impactful, and it's already really impactful. You already really care about what happens to those characters at the end of the movie, and now it's going to be heightened. It's going to be to the power 10 for Cassian and K2SO.
Yeah. But man, I can't wait to see it. K2SO, the two-day guy who voices him, he's such a good character actor. I've seen him in a lot of stuff, and the whole deadpan delivery of everything in that movie just really did it. It was so fun. I can't wait to see more of it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I absolutely agree. So you know what, Colin? We can move straight into our Star Wars moment of the week. Why don't you let me know what yours is?
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record, and I'm sorry, but I've teased this in the last 2 podcasts, and it actually came to fruition this past Saturday. Ray Park came to Amarillo, where I live, and stood in line for about an hour. You can check some of the stuff we posted to Instagram, StarWars.station, if you want to go check that out. I put my basic Obi-Wan Kenobi robe on. I got my beard and my hair. I didn't wear a hat like I usually do. I got my Hasbro plastic Obi-Wan Kenobi saber. I got my Hasbro plastic Darth Maul saber, and got Ray Park to pose. I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi striking a pose against the actual Darth Maul, and that was a highlight. But really, I'm kind of skipping over a bunch of the nuance. He came out from where he was and greeted everybody. Was real happy and jovial to be there. Super happy to see all the fans. And he's not just Darth Maul. He's Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. He's Toad from the X-Men. And so he's real proud of what he does. He's trained a lot in martial arts. He told a lot of people who are interested in what he does, keep training. When I walked up and he greeted me, he's like, "Hey Jedi, how you doing?" And
That's great.
Yeah, it was really cool. He asked me. I'm sorry. I asked him what it was like to be back in Solo, because he actually got to play as Darth Maul at the end of the Solo movie, and he hadn't done that for quite a long time, 20 years I think it was, and so he said, get to be back with doing that. He was under an NDA, but he couldn't tell anybody about it when he first got the news. But he said he wanted to do a backflip in his hotel room when he got the news.
I bet.
And he's real hopeful that something's going to happen. Obviously he couldn't tell us if there's anything going on, but he's hopeful there's going to be something happens with all these TV shows that Disney's putting out, and I hope Disney listens to the fans. Maul is such a good character. He's had a well developed arc. I think there's a lot of stuff we could see with him, or maybe not. Maybe it's overdone. I'm not sure. I know I'd pay to see it. Let's hope Disney feels the same and brings Ray Park along for the ride, because to me it almost has to happen. It's just too cool.
Sure, absolutely.
But I asked him to see if he wanted to be a guest on the podcast. He said he doesn't like talking about himself a bunch and stuff. And that's fine. I understand that. But he said, but we got his contact info. So if something comes along where we hear they're going to put him in another stuff, we're going to see about getting him on here and to talk about everything that's going on, because, we care about the universe. We care about the actors. We want to hear what they have to say and their unique roles, and working on creating everything that we hold so dear to our hearts and stuff, but just overall, just the quality of a person he was, greeting everybody like he did, greeting me, talking to me, posing for all these pictures. He posed pictures for so many people. It was so cool.
That's great. I'm happy to hear that he was such a great guy.
Yeah, there were some character actors from the 501st Legion there that were dressed as Sith. If you get, he's doing a lot of tours now to get signatures and photographs with him. I encourage you to go meet him, because to me it's a bucket list item to meet somebody like that. They don't come to our part of the world very often, so it was super pumped to go and do that. And I'm sorry it took so long talking about this, but for me, where we live, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. If I want to meet some of these other actors, I really got to go out of the way and make a lot of effort. I just had to go down the street. So it was a lot of fun. What about you? What is your star? Or you got any comments on that? I mean, any questions? Because, man, it was quite the deal.
Yeah, well, you answered my question about the Solo one that I wanted you to ask him. But no, I just think it's, like you had said, if he's in a new project coming up and we can get him on the podcast, that'd be phenomenal. But there's there's opportunities coming up that I've heard speculation he might be in flashbacks from the Ahsoka series, or possibly in flashbacks for Kenobi, or things like this. And so, any of this could happen. We don't actually know if it is. But this would all be great. This would all be, a wonderful thing to see. I want to see more of Ray Park in Star Wars, and so I hope that we get it. But as for my moment of the week, it's a lot smaller than yours, but my moment of the week is I just got to watch my favorite Star Wars again this week. I'm doing the chronological watch-through, as everybody knows, and I finally got to Return of the Jedi. And so as I'm doing the whole chronological canon watch-through of Star Wars, Clone Wars, Rebels, I'm going to watch Mandalorian, all of it. I finally got to watch Return of the Jedi this week. It's my absolute favorite Star Wars, and it's just always such a treat when I watch that because it's so nostalgic.
What's your favorite part of the film? Can you even rank that? It's so tough for me.
Oh, well, the whole film is great. I think the whole thing is so much fun, from the fight at the Rancor pit to the, the pit of Carcoon to all of it. I think everything's great, but I would say probably the best part is just the Vader and Luke redemption duel. I think that the whole duel, the whole time, all the scenes with the Emperor trying to convert Luke almost giving in to the dark side, and then, declaring that he won't and that he knows there's good in his father is just awesome. I think it's great.
Yeah. When I was a kid getting to watch those movies, and I'm talking real young, like less than 10 years old, I wasn't around when they came out. I was just a baby or something and all that. But, seeing reruns on the Disney Channel or on VHS tape, being that small, it was the reveal of Darth Vader's face at the very end, seeing that charred face under there, what they came up with after all that time. Because you watched A New Hope a bunch, you watched Empire Strikes Back a bunch, and you watched Return of the Jedi, and it's like, oh my gosh, you finally get to see what's under the mask. It's such a cool reveal.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't agree more. But Colin, I think that wraps it up for this week. I think that we've covered everything we're going to cover on Last Shot and everything else. So I think it's time for us to sign off. So just want to remind everyone that you can follow us at StarWars.station on Instagram. You can watch Colin stream all kinds of video games, especially Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, on twitch.tv/Station Media. We've got a YouTube, Star Wars Station, and we've got a Discord that you can find at the link tree in our Instagram bio.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. There's the Star Wars universe when it comes to print media, not only books, but also comic books, is so vast. There's a lot of knowledge there that goes into a lot of depth for your favorite characters that aren't just the ones who are most prominent on the screen. Tarkin, Leia, a bunch of different ones. Go pick up one of your favorite books and let's talk about it on the Discord. I check it every day. Carter checks it every day. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. And with that, guys, we're going to sign off. We thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next week. May the Force be with you.